Good afternoon and welcome to Weston on the Hill. My name is Alice Peisch and I'm the state representative for the 14th Norfolk District, which includes the towns of Weston, Wellesley, and Precinct 2 in Lincoln. Weston on the Hill was started several years ago, but took a hiatus during COVID, and we are now finally back, and I am very happy to be here. This gives me an opportunity to bring the Weston community up to date on what is happening at the State House. But before I get into that, I would like to give a little information and a plug for cable access television. We would not be able to be here without Weston's cable access TV. And as some of you probably know, but many of you may not, cable access TV in all communities has always been funded since its inception from a fee on the cable TV bills. Unfortunately, with the change in consumer choice from cable TV to more internet-based services, streaming, etc., the revenues that cable access is receiving from the cable portion of your bills has dropped dramatically and is creating significant funding issues for all cable access television. So there is a bill pending in the legislature that would allow that fee to be placed on the internet portion of the bill as opposed to the cable TV portion in order to bring revenues back to where they once were, and so that our cable access stations can continue to bring you all of the local news that is really important. I support that bill. And speaking of local news, I would also like to indicate how pleased I am with the launch of the new Weston Observer. In the communities that I represent, I have noticed over the past several years that the departure of our traditional local newspapers has really had an extraordinarily negative impact on the information and the quality of information that our residents are getting on local government, local activities, high school sports. All of these things that we used to rely on those newspapers for disappeared for some time. And cable TV provides some of that information, but it's not the same. So I'm very happy to see the Weston Observer launching and filling in that void. And I think working together with cable access TV, hopefully the citizens of Weston will feel that they are now getting the kind of relevant information they need on the local happenings. So with me this morning is our town manager.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm Gaumond. I've been the town manager here in Weston since 2018.
Thank you, Leon. It's been a pleasure for me to be working with Leon over these past several years. And I thought that the two of us would have a conversation about the impact of what is happening at the State House on the town government in Weston. So I'll start with the FY26 budget, which was passed at the end of July. Passed at the end of June, took effect during July. And included in that, the relevant portions of that for Weston were the Chapter 70, which is the school aid funding that Weston receives. Now, naturally, Weston and my other towns, Wellesley and Lincoln, are not huge recipients of state funding, given that these are the towns that have significant resources themselves. But the Chapter 70 money for Weston this year is $4.9 million, up from $4.6 last fiscal year. So that's about a $300,000 increase. And then local aid, which is all other aid that the communities get from the state, is $465,000. Again, a relatively modest number, and that increased slightly from last year. The other significant number is the Chapter 90 funds, which deal with funding bridges and roads. And that number for Weston this year was $957,000. And Leon, you might want to go into some explanation as to how these funds are actually used when they get to the town.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I want to thank you and your colleagues in the legislature for bringing us this news. I mean, frankly speaking, on a $110 to $115 million operating budget, these are not insignificant amounts of money, and they sometimes can be the difference between whether or not we are able to continue a program or we have to see cuts in those programs. And while I don't speak for the school superintendent, I'm sure that the school superintendent shares in her feelings of gratitude for the support that has been given to local governments. I will say that what has been most exciting for me in the numbers that you are touting has been in the Chapter 90 funds. Chapter 90 funds have been pretty flat over the last decade or more, and the cost of building roads and bridges and sidewalks and culverts, all of those DPW and public works related jobs have gotten much more expensive. And to have that kind of an increase really helps communities do more than just put aside monies year after year to try to get one project done. We're actually able to move things forward, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And one comment that I feel it's necessary to make at the moment is while the FY26 budget, I believe, is in reasonably good shape. In fact, it is the governor now feels confident enough that we will not be getting dramatic cuts in the current fiscal year from the federal government to allow her to release what are known as local earmarks. So another minor amount of money, but another sum that was specifically directed towards Weston was some funding to help with design funds for the new fire station. And I raised this, obviously I'm very happy to be able to help, and as that fire station project goes forward, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make more of a contribution at the state level. But unfortunately, we are very wary of the impending federal budget cuts. Now, the most significant of which do not take place until after the election cycle next year, November of 2026. But currently, the Congress and the President has signed a bill that would dramatically cut Medicaid across the country, including Massachusetts. And those cuts are on an order of magnitude that this state does not have the resources to make them up. Given that healthcare is critical to all of our residents, and that Medicaid serves our most vulnerable residents, I believe that we may be put in the position of having to cut other programs in order to try to fill some of the gap that the federal cut to Medicaid is projected to bring in fiscal year 27. So as we go into the fiscal year 27 budget, which we will be starting relatively soon, I think you are going to see, unfortunately, some significant cuts to programs that many have come to rely on. I can't yet speak to what the specifics of those will be, and there is always the possibility that when Congress hears from all of the states about their concerns about these very significant cuts, that maybe they will pull back from them. But right now, we don't have any indication that that's going to happen, which makes the budgeting process at the state level very concerning. And it will impact Weston, but of course, these kinds of cuts, Weston is fortunate in that it has sufficient resources to provide most of the funding for most of the town government. Many other communities do not, particularly when you're talking about the schools, which are, as you know, the most expensive program that most cities and towns run. So I just put that out there so that people are not surprised and are aware of the fact that moving forward, despite the fact that state revenues are actually pretty robust, the negative impact of these federal cuts that are coming is likely to be quite significant. So the other local thing I would like to report on are the Weston Home Rule petitions. These, as I'm sure you know, are actions that the town meeting in Weston has taken that need legislative approval. The first one, which will expand or expands the select board from 3 to 5 members, was passed in the House at the end of July. The Senate passed it at the end of September, and I'm happy to report that the governor signed it on October 8th. So I believe that is consistent with the time frame that Weston was planning with respect to transitioning into the new 5-member board. I imagine through your municipal elections.
Yes, we're going to be having a special election on January 13th. To determine whether or not the community wishes to move from 3 members to 5. And if that vote is successful, the caucuses that will be held in March will be afforded the opportunity of seeing 3 names with the highest 2 vote getters getting a 3-year seat and the 3rd vote getter getting a 2-year seat, then giving us a rotation of 2 to 1. For select board members.
So hopefully that will all go smoothly. And I know in recent years, many communities that traditionally have had a 3-member board have moved to 5 members as the demands on the board have increased, and it makes it, I think, a little bit easier for these volunteer positions to tackle the work that they have before them. The second home rule petition that came from Weston this year has to do with, it's a more narrow subject. It has to do with increasing the age limit for retired police officers serving as special police officers. That passed the House last month, and I understand that it is very close to getting a vote in the Senate. They just moved it into the Committee on Third Reading, which I'm sure means nothing to most people, but it's actually the last stop before a bill comes to the floor for a vote. So I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks that will also be enacted and signed by the governor. And Leon, I wonder if you could maybe give a little explanation as to why this is necessary.
Sure. So, like a lot of communities, we have a lot of work, road work that's being done within the roads, and having National Grid and other entities doing work here within the town with our own paving projects, and we've been trying to invest some monies in getting some of our roads up to snuff. We find out that it's hard for a small community to pull from within its ranks enough support to be there for traffic control for some of these utility work, for this utility work. So having the flexibility of bringing in capable, competent former police officers to help us with that actually makes the projects move along and move smoothly when they are underway.
So hopefully we will, as I said, we will have this enacted shortly, and that will well position you for the construction season in spring of 2026.
Great, that would be wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Now there is a bill pending in the legislature that is related to cities and towns that is quite comprehensive, that was filed by the governor. It's that I thought I think it's called the Municipal Relief Bill, but in any event, it has a number of different components to it, and I know that it is strongly supported, the Municipal Empowerment Act, excuse me. I know that it is strongly supported by the Mass Municipal Association, an organization representing all of the municipalities, and an organization that I know Leon is very active in. And so I wondered if you might want to speak to those portions of the bill that you are particularly interested in seeing make it through the process.
Yeah, thank you very much. We understand that additional financial resources every year is not always likely. Particularly in tough times, both with questionable actions by the federal government, also our own challenges here in Massachusetts. But there are always things within the structure of the state government that could be changed that will greatly assist cities and towns in being able to do the jobs that they need to do. One of the things that came about as a result of COVID, as you may remember, before COVID came into being, there was no such thing as remote meetings. Like a select board, if they had to meet, you were meeting in person. If a finance committee had to meet, they were meeting in person. COVID changed all that, and one of the grand experiments that happened as a result of the advent of COVID is we found that, number one, democracy didn't end, and two, from a lot of people's perspective, including my own, I feel pretty strongly democracy increased. We saw more people coming to public meetings than we had prior to COVID beginning. We had a number of people participating through our Zoom platforms where otherwise they might not be able to. Mm-hmm. People who are disabled, people who are seniors and don't drive at night, folks that have children that struggle to find a babysitter to be able to come out to a planning board meeting or a zoning board meeting or a select board meeting. And one of the things that has really opened up my eyes in this process was to see how the public really embraced the remote participation. Now it opens up doors for communities that we didn't have before. If we needed a consultant, to come out and come to a select board meeting, if they were from out of state, it was nearly impossible to coordinate something like that. Now we can pull from all over the place to be able to make presentations to a board or a committee. Until recently, we've been running most, if not all, of our select board meetings fully remote. And over the last year, we've now incorporated a hybrid component to this, where the select board, for example, might meet in person, but some of the participants, the people who come to the mm-hmm. meetings, they might be or interviewing for a committee, or they're making a presentation to the select board. They might actually, do so either in person or remote. And we've outfitted our meeting room space to accommodate that. It's really been, I think, something that has increased democracy here in Weston, and we want to see that continue. And part of the Municipal Empowerment Act that I feel so strongly about is to give communities the ability to decide for themselves how they're going to use it. I have some committees in town, in Weston, that have only met in person since COVID. And I have other committees that have never met once in person since COVID. Boards and committees know their interaction with the public, know their interaction with their members, and they can determine themselves what is the best interest for the committee and for the community. And I want to just make sure that that's codified moving forward. That's one of the primary focuses of the Municipal Empowerment Act that I had my eyes and ears on. Another issue is the procurement. It is, I understand why the municipal law, the state law is the way it is. At some time in the 1800s, somebody gave a contract to their brother-in-law, and all of a sudden the whole world has changed, and now you have to go through a lot of bells and whistles. And as a chief procurement officer here in the town of Weston, I actually support the idea of fair bidding so that people have equal opportunities for goods and services. But those laws haven't been updated in many, 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 many years. And for us to see some real modernization of the Municipal Procurement Act, and to have one set of rules for the schools and a completely different set of rules for municipal side of government, it doesn't make any sense. And to have someone, the Municipal Empowerment Act does one good thing. It does update the Chapter 30B, which is the procurement laws. it does update them and bring them more up to speed with today's work, and it will help communities like us not only continue getting fair and equitable bidding, but it also doesn't have us go through burning hoops on a regular basis for really trivial issues, which the current law really drives us through. Another important component of the Municipal Empowerment Act is the ability for communities to do some of their own revenue generating opportunities. Right now, we don't usually have too many opportunities for local revenue enhancement because state law handcuffs us in doing so. But I know the Municipal Empowerment Act contains a couple of provisions, increasing restaurant meals taxes, for example, increasing municipal excise taxes on a local level, for an example. These are things that a community can decide among themselves, is this worth pursuing or not? And would we pursue these in Weston? Maybe, maybe not. We don't really need to have a plan to do so right now. But to know if things were to get bad, if we started to see federal or state cutbacks, to know that we have an avenue to be able to recoup some or all of those funds by making some few internal changes on our side, that would be a great benefit to many cities and towns, including possibly Weston. Another provision of the Municipal Empowerment Act that I agree with, and actually I wish could be expanded, is the authorization for school borrowings. Currently, the Mass General Law allows for borrowing for school-related projects. I'm talking construction, right? At 30 years, construction borrowing terms. There is a provision in the Municipal Empowerment Act to move that to 40 years because usually these buildings last well beyond 30 years of useful life. I would go so far as to say it would be great if we could expand that to other municipal buildings. You know, our police stations, our fire stations, our town halls, all of these are municipal buildings that have greater than 30 years use. I mean, I think about our water tank project that we really struggled to get over the end zone, knowing that a community like Weston would have the ability to borrow for a longer period of term. Sure, the interest payments will be higher in the end, but on a per annual basis, we'll avoid some of the peaks and valleys, the big spikes when some of these projects come in, if we can make it over a longer period of time. These are some of the there's a lot of other provisions of the statute that of the Municipal Empowerment Act that I think are really interesting. Maybe not for the viewing audience, but really help codify and modernize some of the provisions that we've been operating under, in some cases, for decades.
Well, thank you for that summary. I know that two of the things that you mentioned, I'm of course very familiar with the remote meetings. You know, the legislature met remotely during COVID.
Yeah.
And one of the, to the extent you can say anything positive came out of COVID, I think one of the positive consequences was the increase in the use of technology and remote meetings over a wide range of areas in the private sector as well. So I certainly support extending the ability to do that. In fact, currently the law has extended it until the end of March in 2027. So I am hopeful that we will take this bill up in 2026 and at least pass this provision in time to not have any kind of a period where between the expiration of the current law and the enactment of this provision. I do not believe that it is a part of the Municipal Empowerment Act, but there is a separate bill that's been filed that would allow open town meeting to be remote. And you and I have met about that. I understand the argument about the access issue. As you've mentioned, the difficulty of getting out at night for a variety of different groups. And certainly from my perspective, I think allowing a broad cross-section of people to attend town meeting for all of the articles. My understanding is frequently in open town meetings, you have different groups show up for different articles.
Yep.
And these are all, I think, very compelling arguments. There is, however, concern about the ability, the security of a remote town meeting that would, open town meeting, since it's open to all the voters. And how could you ensure, in the instance of Weston, that the 7,000 plus voters that are here, so how do you check all those people in? I know that this is being worked upon, but I think until we have a really strong evidence of a security system that could be easily implemented and not at an outrageous cost, that the legislation will probably not go forward. That's the feedback that I've been getting, and I think these are legitimate questions. But given the speed with which technology advances, I'm optimistic that we will get good answers to those questions and be able to shift to that option, should the town wish. Again, this would not be a requirement, as is the case with most of the sections of the Empowerment Act. It leaves it gives the towns the options to take advantage of those sections that would be most helpful to them. I would like to just comment on two other pieces of legislation that are pending in the legislature, one of which I know is of interest to many Western residents, and I believe the other one is of equal importance. The first is a bill that I am the co-sponsor of that would limit access to personal electronic devices during school hours, otherwise known as cell phones. The Weston School Committee, in fact, did enact what's referred to as a bell-to-bell ban on access to cell phones earlier this year. So Weston is a leader in this area. But the legislation that I have filed would require that all districts pass a policy. It leaves a lot of discretion to the districts as to exactly what that policy would be, how it would be enforced, et cetera. But the bottom line is, much research shows that the access to cell phones, not just during class time, but between classes, during lunch hour, et cetera, has had a very detrimental impact on our students, both in terms of their ability to concentrate when they are in class, as well as creating an increase in mental health issues. So I think this is very important. The bill itself has already gone through, a portion of it has gone through the Senate. We're now looking at it in the House. The Senate bill did not include a second section, which I think is of equal importance, and that is requiring districts to educate students on digital and media literacy, so that and media meaning not media like Weston Cable Access or the Weston Observer, but the type of media, the electronic, the internet. I think too often we hear about situations where not just students, but adults assume that what they're reading on the internet is accurate, and they don't have any understanding of how to check the veracity of this. So these would be tools that our students would be exposed to, so that when they, not only as students but as adults, they would be able to navigate the electronic media landscape that we are now confronted with. And then the second bill that I'd like to mention has to do with literacy. I expect that we will actually be taking that up in the House on Wednesday of this week, and that is legislation that will require that literacy programs for early elementary grades are based on evidence and not based on a type of curriculum that has been discredited, that unfortunately has shown to be not at all effective. I became very concerned about this issue going back about 10 years when I was appointed to the National Assessment Governing Board, which is the body that oversees the what are often referred to as the nation's report card, but are also the NAEP tests given in the 4th and 8th grade every other year across the country. And we saw stagnant and declining outcomes in literacy, starting, I would say, 10 to 12 years ago, so this predates COVID. And so this legislation would require that all districts make sure that the curriculums that are being utilized in their elementary schools are those that will produce successful readers. Because, as you know, if you cannot read, you cannot access other subjects. So I think this is of critical importance, and I look forward to it passing the House this week and hopefully moving on to the Senate and the governor's desk shortly thereafter. So that concludes my remarks for this session of Weston on the Hill, and it has been a pleasure to have you with me this morning, Leanne,
The pleasure
or this
was all
afternoon.
mine.
And I look forward to continuing this on a regular basis as we did before COVID. So a big thank you to Weston Media Cable Access for sponsoring this. Thank you.